Stop before you spend another quarter on a cup of coffee. You need to see this. Hidden inside ordinary pocket change are rare Washington quarters that have shocked collectors, made headlines, and in exceptional documented cases have sold for thousands of dollars. Today on RE Coins News, we're uncovering the secrets behind the 1965, 1973, 1980D, and 1999P Connecticut quarters. Their incredible history, rare mint eras, collector mysteries, and the tiny details that could separate an ordinary 25-cent coin from a highly sought-after collectible. So grab your coins, watch until the very end, and you might discover you've been carrying a piece of American history without even realizing it. Let's begin. The story of the 1965 Washington quarter begins long before the coin itself was ever struck. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary piece of pocket change, something that has passed through countless hands in grocery stores, banks, vending machines, and family collections for decades. Yet behind this seemingly common coin lies one of the most important turning points in the history of American money. The year 1965 forever changed the way coins were made in the United States, ending an era that had lasted for generations. Because of this historic transformation, collectors continue to search through old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten drawers, hoping to discover an unusual example that escaped ordinary production. While most 1965 quarters remain worth only their face value in circulated condition, a small number with extraordinary errors or unusual characteristics have become prized collectibles, making this one of the most discussed coins in modern American numismatics. To understand why the 1965 Washington quarter became so significant, it is necessary to travel back to the early years of the 20th century. Before George Washington appeared on the quarter, another design represented the 25-cent denomination. The Standing Liberty Quarter, introduced in 1916, featured Lady Liberty and served the nation for many years. By the early 1930s, however, the United States prepared to celebrate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Officials believed this milestone deserved a lasting tribute that honored the country's first president. A nationwide design competition followed, leading to the selection of sculptor John Flanagan's portrait of Washington. His design debuted in 1932 and quickly became one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Few people could have imagined that this portrait would remain on the quarter for generations and eventually become part of one of the greatest changes in United States mint history. George Washington was chosen for far more than his role as the first president of the United States. He symbolized leadership during the American Revolution, the struggle for independence, and the creation of a new constitutional government. His reputation for integrity and restraint earned him admiration not only in America, but throughout the world. By placing his likeness on the quarter, the nation honored ideals that many believed represented the country's foundation. Every inscription surrounding the portrait carries symbolic meaning. The word liberty reflects one of the nation's central principles, while In God We Trust expresses a national motto adopted on many American coins. Together with the date beneath Washington's portrait, these elements transformed a simple quarter into a miniature piece of American history that millions of citizens carried every day. The reverse side of the original Washington quarter was equally meaningful. Dominating the design was a powerful eagle with wings spread wide, perched proudly on a bundle of arrows. Beneath the arrows rested olive branches, representing the balance between military strength and the desire for peace. Above the eagle appeared the words, United States of America, while EPLUBUSUNUM reminded citizens that the nation had been formed from many states united as one. At the bottom appeared the denomination, quarter dollar. Each detail was carefully placed to communicate national identity, strength, unity, and hope. Although millions of these coins were produced, the artistic symbolism behind the design often went unnoticed by those who spent them in everyday transactions. For more than 3 decades after the Washington quarter first appeared, the coin was struck using an alloy containing 90% silver and 10% copper. Silver gave American coins their distinctive bright appearance and intrinsic value, but as the 1950s turned into the early 1960s, the precious metal became increasingly expensive. the value of the silver inside circulating coins approached the coin's face value, encouraging people to save them rather than spend them. As silver prices continued to climb, large quantities of coins disappeared from circulation. Banks struggled to meet demand, businesses lacked enough change for daily commerce, and many Americans began storing silver coins at home because they believed the metal itself would become more valuable over time. The growing shortage of coins eventually became a national concern. The United States Mint faced enormous pressure to produce enough quarters, dimes, and half dollars for commerce, while also dealing with rising silver costs. Government officials debated possible solutions, knowing that simply increasing production would not solve the underlying problem if people continued removing silver coins from circulation. After extensive discussion, Congress approved one of the most significant monetary changes in American history through the Coinage Act of 1965. This legislation fundamentally altered the composition of several American coins and permanently changed the appearance of United States currency for future generations. When the first 1965 Washington quarters left the presses, they looked almost identical to their silver predecessors. Their size, overall appearance, and familiar Washington portrait remained unchanged, allowing the public to accept the new coins without confusion. Hidden beneath the surface, however, was an entirely different composition. Instead of 90% silver, the new quarters featured an outer layer of copper-nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This clad construction dramatically reduced production costs while preserving the familiar appearance Americans expected. The change marked the end of regular silver quarter production and ushered in a new era that continues to this day. One feature of the 1965 quarter often surprises new collectors: the absence of a mint mark. Under normal circumstances, coins produced in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco carry small identifying letters that reveal where they were struck. During the coin shortage, however, mint officials feared that collectors were saving coins based on mint marks, reducing the number entering circulation. To discourage this practice, mint marks were temporarily removed from quarters, dimes, and half dollars dated 1965, 1966, and 1967. As a result, nearly every genuine 1965 Washington quarter lacks a mint mark, and this absence is completely normal rather than a sign of rarity. The production of the 1965 quarter reached astonishing levels. The United States Mint manufactured well over 1 billion examples to satisfy the country's desperate need for circulating coinage. Massive presses operated around the clock, transforming metal strips into finished coins at extraordinary speed. Workers inspected equipment, monitored quality, and packaged countless bags of fresh quarters destined for banks nationwide. Because of the immense production volume, the overwhelming majority of 1965 quarters remain common today. Nevertheless, producing billions of coins under demanding conditions also increased the chance that a tiny number would leave the mint with unusual striking errors or manufacturing anomalies, creating the rare pieces that fascinate collectors decades later. Although ordinary examples are common, collectors carefully examine every 1965 quarter because unexpected discoveries occasionally emerge. Some coins display dramatic off-center strikes where part of the design is missing because the blank shifted before striking. Others reveal clipped planchets, die cracks, broad strikes, or doubled details created during the minting process. Particularly desirable are quarters mistakenly struck on silver planchets intended for earlier issues or on blanks meant for different denominations. Such mint errors are exceptionally scarce because multiple quality control steps normally prevent them from entering circulation. When authenticated by respected grading services, these unusual pieces can command prices far above the value of a normal quarter. Condition also plays a major role in determining a 1965 quarter's value. A coin that's circulated for decades often shows worn high points, softened lettering, and countless tiny scratches from everyday use. These pieces usually remain worth face value unless they possess a significant mint error. By contrast, coins preserved immediately after minting may retain brilliant luster, sharp details, and virtually no signs of wear. Professional grading companies evaluate preservation using internationally recognized standards, and the finest known examples can attract substantial premiums simply because so few survived in pristine condition after billions entered circulation. Another fascinating aspect of the 1965 Washington quarter is how easily it can be mistaken for its silver predecessors. At first glance, the two coins appear almost identical. Experienced collectors, however, often begin by examining the edge. A clad quarter reveals a visible copper-colored stripe sandwiched between the outer layers, while a traditional silver quarter displays a uniform silver-colored edge. Weight, sound, and metallic composition provide additional clues, but the edge remains one of the quickest methods for distinguishing the historic clad issue from the earlier silver version. This simple observation has helped countless collectors correctly identify the coins in their collections. As the years passed, the 1965 Washington quarter came to represent far more than a simple denomination. It became a symbol of economic adaptation during a period when the nation faced rising precious metal prices, increasing demand for circulating coinage, and the practical necessity of modernizing its currency. What initially appeared to be a routine design change eventually proved to be one of the defining moments in American numismatic history. Today, every authentic 1965 quarter tells the story of that transformation. Whether found in loose change, inherited from a relative, or purchased for a collection, it serves as a tangible reminder of the year the United States left the age of circulating silver behind and embraced a new chapter in coin production that continues to shape American currency today. By the late 1960s, millions of Americans had already become familiar with the new copper-nickel Washington quarter, yet very few realized that the enormous pace of production occasionally created coins that were anything but ordinary. Every coin begins its journey as a carefully prepared metal blank before powerful presses strike the design with tremendous force. Even with strict quality control, no manufacturing process is completely perfect. Tiny mechanical changes, worn dies, shifting blanks, or unexpected equipment problems sometimes produced coins with fascinating mint errors. Most flawed pieces were caught and destroyed before they could leave the mint, but a very small number escaped into circulation. Decades later, these accidental survivors have become some of the most exciting discoveries in American coin collecting because they tell the story of the minting process itself rather than simply displaying the intended design. One of the most dramatic mistakes collectors search for is an off-center strike. This occurs when the blank fails to line up correctly beneath the dies before the coin is struck. Instead of receiving a perfectly centered design, part of the image is missing, while a blank crescent-shaped area remains visible. The value of an off-center quarter depends on how dramatic the error is and whether the date remains visible. If too little of the design is present, identifying the coin becomes difficult. If the strike is dramatic while still preserving the date, collectors often find it much more desirable. Every off-center coin is unique because no two misalignments occur in exactly the same way, giving each example its own appearance and personality. Another fascinating error involves a clipped planchet. Before a coin is struck, round blanks are punched from large sheets of metal. Occasionally, the cutting equipment overlaps a previously punched hole, producing a blank with a curved section missing from its edge. When struck, the finished quarter permanently displays this missing area while the rest of the design appears normal. A genuine clipped planchet is the result of a manufacturing mistake, not postmint damage. Specialists examine the shape of the clip, the metal flow around it, and other characteristics to determine whether the piece left the mint in that condition. Authentic clipped planchet quarters are much scarcer than ordinary examples and remain popular among collectors who appreciate unusual minting errors. Some of the most intriguing coins are broad strikes. In a normal striking process, a collar surrounds the blank to keep the metal from spreading outward under pressure. If the collar fails to engage properly, the coin expands beyond its intended diameter, producing a wider, thinner piece with distorted edges. Although every design detail may still be visible, the unusual shape immediately distinguishes the coin from a normal quarter. Broad strikes provide collectors with a remarkable glimpse into the mechanics of coin production because they reveal the important role that the collar plays during striking. Even a small mechanical failure lasting only a moment can create a collectible that survives for generations. Die cracks, represent another category of mint eras that often captures attention. As steel dies strike thousands upon thousands of coins, they gradually experience stress and fatigue. Tiny cracks may develop on the die's surface, causing raised lines to appear on every coin struck afterward. Early cracks can be thin and difficult to notice, while advanced cracks sometimes become bold enough to extend across major portions of the design. In extreme cases, sections of the die may break away entirely, producing dramatic raised features known as cuds. Because each crack develops differently, collectors enjoy tracing the progression of die deterioration through surviving examples struck during different stages of a die's life. Among all known mint mistakes, perhaps none generate more excitement than transitional errors involving the wrong metal. The Coinage Act of 1965 ended regular production of 90% silver quarters, yet during any major manufacturing transition, there is always a possibility that leftover materials remain in the production system. Extremely rare quarters believed to have been struck on silver planchets intended for earlier issues have attracted enormous attention from the numismatic community. These coins are exceptionally scarce and require careful authentication because ordinary clad quarters can never be transformed into genuine silver eras after leaving the mint. Specialists examine weight, metallic composition, edge appearance, and other characteristics before confirming such extraordinary discoveries. This difference between rarity and age is one of the most valuable lessons in coin collecting. A coin can be many decades old yet remain common because millions survive. Conversely, a much newer coin may become highly valuable if only a handful display a specific mint era or if very few survive in outstanding condition. Collectors therefore study every detail rather than relying on age alone. They inspect lettering, dates, edges, surfaces, strike quality, weight, and composition before forming conclusions. Patience, knowledge, and careful examination often prove more rewarding than chasing sensational stories that promise instant wealth without evidence. The 1965 Washington Quarter also represents a remarkable chapter in the evolution of American manufacturing technology. Producing billions of durable clad coins required new bonding techniques, updated machinery, and careful engineering to ensure that the outer copper-nickel layers remained securely attached to the copper core. These innovations allowed the mint to create coins capable of withstanding years of circulation while reducing dependence on increasingly expensive silver. The success of this transition influenced the composition of many later American coins and demonstrated how practical engineering solutions could address national economic challenges without drastically changing the familiar appearance of everyday currency. Collectors often describe searching through rolls of quarters as a treasure hunt because every coin carries the possibility of an unexpected surprise. Most searches end with ordinary circulation pieces, yet every so often someone discovers an overlooked error, an unusually high-grade example, or another fascinating variety that escaped notice for decades. These moments keep enthusiasm alive within the hobby. The excitement comes not from expecting instant riches, but from knowing that history sometimes hides in the smallest objects. Each coin examined deepens a collector's understanding of minting, design, metallurgy, and the remarkable journey that everyday money takes through society. More than 60 years after its release, the 1965 Washington Quarter continues to occupy a special place in American numismatics. It marked the conclusion of one historic era and the beginning of another, preserving the familiar portrait of George Washington while introducing an entirely new composition that reshaped United States coinage. Whether viewed as a historical artifact, a collectible, or simply a piece of everyday currency, the coin remains a lasting reminder that even the most ordinary objects can reflect major moments in a nation's history. For collectors, every genuine 1965 quarter invites one simple question. Is it just another circulating coin, or does it hold an unusual story waiting to be discovered? That enduring sense of curiosity is what keeps this remarkable coin alive in collections and conversations around the world. Step 2. The moment you hold a 1999p Connecticut State quarter in your hand, you are holding much more than 25 cents. At first glance, it appears to be another ordinary Washington quarter that has passed through cash registers, vending machines, banks, and countless pockets across America. Yet behind its familiar appearance lies a remarkable story that reaches back more than 3 centuries, connecting the founding of a colony, a legendary oak tree, the birth of one of the most successful coin programs in United States history, and the beginning of a collecting movement that inspired millions of people. While most 1999 Connecticut quarters found in circulation today are worth only their face value, the coin's historical importance, beautiful design, and a small number of rare mint errors have made it one of the most recognized modern American quarters among collectors. To understand why this coin became so important, we must first travel to the late 1990s. By that time, the Washington quarter had carried essentially the same reverse design for decades. Although respected by collectors, many Americans hardly noticed the coins they spent every day. The United States Mint wanted to create something that would renew public interest in the nation's history while encouraging people to learn about every state. This vision led to the creation of the historic 50-state quarters program, one of the most successful commemorative circulating coin programs ever introduced. Beginning in 1999, each state would receive its own unique reverse design, released in the order that the states joined the Union. The program transformed ordinary pocket change into miniature history lessons, encouraging families, students, and collectors to search for every new release. Because Connecticut became the 5th state to ratify the United States Constitution in 1788, it was selected as one of the first 5 designs released during the inaugural year of the program. The coin proudly displays Connecticut, the date 1788, and the year of issue 1999. Unlike previous Washington quarters, which shared nearly identical reverse designs year after year, this coin introduced Americans to a scene deeply connected to Connecticut's identity. Instead of an eagle, the reverse features one of the state's most treasured historical symbols, the famous charter oak. This majestic tree became the centerpiece of the design because it represented courage, independence, and the determination to protect self-government during a turbulent period of colonial history. The legend of the charter oak is one of the most enduring stories in early American history. According to tradition, in 1687, representatives of King James II attempted to seize Connecticut's colonial charter, a document that guaranteed important rights and a significant degree of self-government. During a tense meeting, the room reportedly fell into darkness. When the lights returned, the charter had disappeared. Legend says that Captain Joseph Wadsworth secretly removed the document and concealed it inside the hollow trunk of a massive white oak tree. Whether every detail unfolded exactly as remembered or some elements became enriched through generations of storytelling, the charter oak soon became a lasting symbol of resistance, liberty, and the determination to preserve local rights against outside control. For nearly 2 centuries, the charter oak stood as one of Connecticut's most beloved landmarks. Generations visited the tree to admire the place where tradition said freedom had been protected. Although the tree eventually fell during a severe storm in 1856, its memory never disappeared. Wood from the fallen oak was carefully preserved and transformed into furniture, ceremonial objects, and treasured historical keepsakes. By choosing the charter oak for the Connecticut State Quarter, the United States Mint ensured that millions of people across the country would continue learning about this remarkable chapter of colonial history every time the coin changed hands. The front of the coin remained faithful to the classic Washington quarter design introduced in 1932. George Washington's portrait, created by sculptor John Flanagan, continued to dominate the obverse. Above his head appears the word liberty, reminding every generation of one of the nation's defining ideals. To the left stands the national motto, "In God We Trust," while the date, 1999, appears beneath Washington's portrait. On coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a small letter P appears near the date. This tiny mint mark identifies where the coin was produced and helps collectors distinguish it from identical designs struck at other United States Mint facilities during the same year. Many new collectors wonder why the P mint mark matters. For much of American coinage history, Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark at all. Over time, however, practices changed, and most circulating coins struck, they began receiving the letter P. This simple marking allows collectors to identify the coin's place of origin immediately. During the state quarters program, millions of Connecticut quarters were produced at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, while San Francisco struck specially prepared proof versions intended for collectors rather than circulation. Understanding the significance of mint marks is one of the first lessons every coin enthusiast learns because they provide valuable information about a coin's production history. The reverse design contains several inscriptions that often go unnoticed despite appearing in plain sight. Across the upper edge are the words United States of America, identifying the issuing nation. Above the charter oak appears EPLUBUSUNUM, a Latin phrase meaning out of many, one, reflecting the unity of the states within a single nation. The denomination quarter dollar curves along the lower portion of the coin, while Connecticut and 1788 commemorate the state's admission to the Union. Every inscription serves a purpose, transforming the coin into far more than currency. Together they create a compact historical monument that celebrates both state identity and national unity. When the Connecticut quarter entered circulation in 1999, public enthusiasm exceeded nearly every expectation. Families searched through pocket change hopping to complete collections. Children filled colorful coin maps showing all 50 states. Banks received requests for fresh rolls of newly released quarters, while many people who had never before considered collecting coins suddenly became enthusiastic participants in the program. Schools even incorporated the state quarters program into classroom activities, using each release to teach geography, history, and civics. The Connecticut quarter, therefore, represents more than a collectible. It symbolizes the beginning of a nationwide educational movement that introduced millions of Americans to their country's diverse heritage. The Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of Connecticut quarters, making ordinary circulated examples readily available today. Because such a large number entered commerce, the typical worn coin remains worth 25 cents. Nevertheless, collectors continue examining these quarters carefully because the size of the production also increased the chance that a very small number of unusual mint errors escaped quality control. Every year, dedicated hobbyists discover fascinating varieties that remind us even the most carefully controlled manufacturing process is not completely immune to occasional mistakes. One important fact every collector should remember is that rarity determines value far more than age alone. A coin from 1999 is not automatically valuable simply because it is older than today's circulation pieces. Instead, collectors focus on condition, authenticity, striking quality, and unusual manufacturing errors. A Connecticut quarter preserved in exceptional mint condition may attract significant interest, while authenticated mint errors can command much stronger prices than ordinary circulation examples. Careful examination, accurate identification, and professional authentication are the keys to understanding whether a particular coin is simply common change or an unusual collectible with genuine numismatic appeal. More than 2 decades after its release, the 1999 P Connecticut State Quarter remains one of the defining coins of the modern era. It launched a collecting phenomenon, honored one of America's most famous colonial legends, celebrated the enduring ideals of liberty and self-government, and reminded millions that history can be carried in something as ordinary as a quarter. Every authentic example tells a story that stretches from the colonial forests of 17th century Connecticut to the pockets of people across the nation. That remarkable journey is what continues to make this coin one of the most fascinating chapters in the history of United States coinage. As millions of Connecticut state quarters rolled off the presses in Philadelphia during 1999, each coin was expected to look exactly like the one before it. The United States Mint relied on carefully engineered machinery capable of producing thousands of coins every hour with remarkable precision. Massive steel dies struck blank metal planchets under tremendous pressure, transferring every line, letter, and detail of the design in a fraction of a second. Even with advanced equipment, and strict inspections. However, perfection is never guaranteed in any manufacturing process. Tiny mechanical changes, worn tools, or slight misalignments occasionally created unusual coins that escaped into circulation. These accidental survivors have fascinated collectors ever since because they provide a rare glimpse into the hidden world of coin production. One of the most dramatic errors collectors search for is the off-center strike. Before a coin receives its design, the blank must sit perfectly between the dies. If it shifts even slightly, the image may be struck away from the center, leaving part of the coin blank, while the remaining design appears crowded to one side. The more dramatic the shift, the more unusual the finished coin becomes. Collectors generally prefer examples that still display the full date and mint mark because these details confirm exactly when and where the coin was produced. Every authentic off-center strike is unique, making each one an individual piece of minting history rather than a mass-produced collectible. Another fascinating error is the clipped planchet. Before striking begins, round blanks are punched from large sheets of metal. If the punching machine overlaps a previously cut opening, a blank may leave the press with a curved section missing from its edge. When that incomplete blank receives its design, the missing portion remains visible forever. Genuine clipped planchets display characteristics that distinguish them from coins damaged after leaving the mint. Specialists study the shape of the clip and the metal flow surrounding it before determining whether the error occurred during manufacturing. Because these pieces escaped several layers of quality control, they continue to attract collectors who enjoy studying how coins are made. Broad strike errors reveal another interesting aspect of the minting process. Normally, a metal collar surrounds each blank during striking, keeping the coin at the correct diameter while forming its edge. If the collar fails to engage properly, the blank spreads outward under pressure instead of being confined to its intended size. The resulting coin appears wider and thinner than normal while still displaying most of its design. Broad strikes remind collectors that even a tiny mechanical malfunction lasting only a moment can create a collectible that survives for decades. Every broad strike tells a silent story about the incredible forces involved in producing modern coinage. Die cracks also capture the attention of experienced collectors. Steel dies endure enormous stress as they strike hundreds of thousands of coins throughout their working lives. Over time, microscopic fractures may develop across the die surface. Every coin struck afterward carries raised lines corresponding to those cracks. Some remain thin enough to require magnification, while others become bold and easily visible without special equipment. In advanced cases, a portion of the die may break away completely, creating a raised feature known as a cud. These progressive changes allow collectors to study the life cycle of a working die and observe how production equipment gradually wears under constant use. Occasionally, foreign materials such as grease or debris temporarily fills recessed portions of a die before striking occurs. When this happens, certain letters, numbers, or design elements may appear weak or completely missing on the finished coin. These pieces are commonly known as struck-through or grease-filled die errors. Although they usually command more modest premiums than dramatic off-center strikes or wrong planchet errors, they remain fascinating because they demonstrate how even the smallest obstruction inside a die can alter the appearance of thousands of coins before the problem is discovered and corrected. Among the rarest modern mint mistakes are wrong planchet errors. Every denomination requires blanks of a specific size, weight, and metal composition. On extremely rare occasions, a blank intended for another denomination or another coining process may accidentally enter the quarter production line. If struck with quarter dies, the resulting coin often appears incomplete because the blank is either too small or made from different metal. These extraordinary errors are carefully authenticated by specialists using precise measurements, weight, and metallurgical analysis. Because genuine wrong planchet errors are exceptionally uncommon, they often become highlights of advanced collections. Many collectors also pay close attention to coins showing unusually strong strikes. Although this is not considered a mint error, a sharply struck Connecticut quarter displays remarkable detail in Washington's portrait, the charter oak, lettering, and fine design elements. Combined with original mint luster and minimal contact marks, such coins represent the finest examples of the issue. High-grade specimens are especially desirable because most quarters immediately entered circulation, where years of handling gradually reduced their original brilliance. Finding a nearly perfect survivor decades later is far less common than many people realize. Professional grading has transformed the modern coin market by providing consistent evaluations of authenticity and preservation. Independent grading services examine every detail before assigning a numerical grade based on internationally accepted standards. A difference of only 1 or 2 grading points can significantly affect collector demand, especially among coins approaching the highest levels of preservation. This careful evaluation helps buyers and sellers communicate confidently about a coin's condition while protecting the integrity of the marketplace. For modern issues like the 1999 Connecticut quarter, exceptional grades are often much scarcer than the enormous original mintage might suggest. Stories occasionally appear online claiming that ordinary Connecticut quarters are secretly worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Such headlines attract attention because everyone enjoys imagining a life-changing discovery in everyday pocket change. The reality is more measured. Most circulated 1999 Connecticut quarters remain worth their face value of 25 cents because hundreds of millions were produced. Coins that bring impressive prices almost always possess something truly exceptional, such as an authenticated mint era, extraordinary preservation, or another highly unusual characteristic verified by respected experts. Separating documented facts from exaggerated claims is one of the most important skills every collector develops. Even though sensational stories often dominate the internet, the true excitement of coin collecting comes from learning history, understanding craftsmanship, and appreciating the remarkable journey each coin has taken. Every scratch, worn edge, or remaining trace of mint luster reflects years of circulation through businesses, families, and communities across the country. The Connecticut quarter represents far more than its monetary value. It celebrates one of America's most enduring colonial legends while marking the beginning of a coin program that inspired millions of people to explore history through everyday currency. Whether discovered in a cash drawer, an old collection, or a forgotten jar of change, each authentic 1999 Connecticut state quarter carries a small but meaningful piece of the American story, one that continues to inspire collectors and history enthusiasts alike. Every coin collector dreams of making an unforgettable discovery. The excitement begins the moment an old coin jar is poured onto a table or a freshly wrapped bankroll is opened for the first time. Each quarter is turned beneath the light, carefully examined for unusual details that most people would never notice. The 1999 Connecticut state quarter has inspired thousands of these treasure hunts since it first entered circulation. Although the overwhelming majority of examples remain ordinary spending money, the possibility of finding a remarkable mint era or an exceptionally preserved specimen continues to attract collectors of every age. It is this combination of history, mystery, and careful observation that has helped the Connecticut quarter remain one of the most searched modern American coins. More than 2 decades after its release, the 1999 Connecticut state quarter continues to hold a special place in American numismatics. It launched a program that transformed everyday pocket change into a nationwide history lesson, honored one of Connecticut's most enduring symbols, and reminded people that coins can preserve stories as effectively as books and monuments. Whether your quarter is worth only 25 cents or turns out to be an authenticated collectible, it remains a tangible connection to the people, events, and ideas that shaped the United States. Step 3. At first glance, the 1973 Washington quarter appears almost identical to millions of other quarters that have passed through the hands of Americans for decades. It carries the familiar portrait of George Washington on the front, the majestic eagle on the reverse, and the patriotic inscriptions that have become symbols of the United States itself. Because so many of these coins were produced, most people spend them without giving them a second thought. Yet every genuine 1973 quarter tells a fascinating story that reaches far beyond its face value. It represents a period when the United States was adapting to economic change, modernizing its coinage, and entering a new era after the historic transition away from circulating silver. While most circulated 1973 quarters are worth only 25 cents, certain high-grade examples and authenticated mint errors have attracted serious attention from collectors because of their rarity rather than their age alone. The story of the Washington quarter actually began more than 40 years before 1973. In 1932, the United States celebrated the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. To honor the nation's first president, the government introduced a brand-new $quarter design featuring his portrait. Sculptor John Flanagan created the image that would become one of the most recognizable faces in American coinage. Few people could have imagined that this design would remain in use for generations, surviving changing technologies, economic challenges, and evolving artistic trends while continuing to represent stability within the nation's currency. George Washington was selected not simply because he served as the first president of the United States, but because he symbolized the nation's founding principles. His leadership during the Revolutionary War, his role in establishing the new government, and his decision to step away from power after 2 presidential terms established traditions that influenced democracies around the world. Every time Americans used a Washington quarter, they carried a reminder of those ideals. The word liberty above his portrait reflected one of the nation's most treasured values, while In God We Trust expressed the national motto that had gradually become a familiar feature of United States coinage. Beneath Washington's portrait appears the date 1973, marking the year this particular coin entered circulation. Turning the coin over reveals another classic design that had become familiar to generations of Americans. A powerful eagle spreads its wings above a bundle of arrows, while olive branches rest below, symbolizing the balance between military strength and the desire for peace. Across the upper edge appears United States of America, announcing the issuing nation, while EPLUBUSUNUM, meaning out of many, one, celebrates the union of the states into a single country. Along the bottom appears $quarter, identifying the denomination. Every inscription and every design element was carefully chosen to communicate national identity, strength, and unity through something as ordinary as everyday pocket change. One of the biggest misconceptions surrounding the 1973 Washington quarter involves its metal content. Many people assume that any older quarter must contain silver simply because it has been around for decades. In reality, regular circulation quarters dated 1973 were struck using a copper core bonded between outer layers of copper-nickel. A composition introduced after the Coinage Act of 1965 ended the production of circulating 90% silver quarters. As silver prices increased during the 1960s, millions of silver coins disappeared from circulation because their precious metal content became increasingly valuable. To solve the growing shortage of coins, the United States adopted the durable clad composition that remains in use today. Collectors often notice another interesting detail on 1973 quarters. Some display a mint mark, while others do not. This small letter reveals where the coin was produced. A quarter with no mint mark was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Coins displaying a D were produced in Denver, while collector-proof coins bearing an S originated at the San Francisco Mint. Understanding mint marks helps collectors identify the origin of a coin and compare production numbers between different facilities. Although Philadelphia struck coins without a mint mark during this period, that absence is completely normal and does not indicate a rare error. The United States Mint produced hundreds of millions of Washington quarters during 1973 to meet the nation's continuing demand for circulating coinage. Powerful presses operated day after day, transforming enormous coils of clad metal into finished quarters ready for shipment to banks throughout the country. Because production numbers were so high, most surviving examples remain common today. Nevertheless, the sheer scale of production also meant that a very small number of coins escaped with unusual manufacturing mistakes, creating the rare error coins that continue to excite collectors decades later. Although billions of coins pass through the minting process successfully, no manufacturing system is absolutely perfect. Steel dies gradually wear, machinery occasionally shifts, and metal blanks sometimes fail to align exactly as intended. Most imperfect coins are detected before leaving the mint, but a small number escape quality control and enter circulation. Years later, these accidental survivors become fascinating collectibles because they preserve evidence of the minting process itself. Every authentic mint error tells a story about how a tiny mechanical variation lasting only seconds created something entirely different from the intended design. Condition plays an equally important role in determining a 1973 quarter's desirability. Most examples spent decades moving from one transaction to another, gradually acquiring scratches, worn details, and dull surfaces through ordinary use. Coins preserved directly after minting, however, often retain brilliant luster, sharply defined details, and minimal contact marks. Such well-preserved examples become increasingly scarce as time passes because relatively few people intentionally saved ordinary clad quarters when they were first released. Today, collectors compete for the finest known examples precisely because surviving in pristine condition for more than 50 years is far more unusual than simply surviving. One simple way to identify a regular 1973 clad quarter is by examining its edge. Unlike pre-1965 silver quarters, which display a solid silver-colored edge, clad quarters reveal a thin copper-colored stripe running through the middle. This visible copper core quickly distinguishes ordinary circulation issues from earlier silver coins. It also reminds collectors of the historic transition that reshaped American coinage during the mid-1960s. A careful glance at the edge often provides one of the easiest ways to determine whether a Washington quarter belongs to the silver era or the modern clad era. Today, the 1973 Washington quarter remains an important piece of American numismatic history. It may not be the rarest quarter ever produced, nor is every example a hidden fortune waiting to be discovered. Yet it represents a fascinating period when the United States had fully embraced modern coin production while preserving the classic Washington design that generations had come to recognize. For collectors, historians, and anyone curious about the nation's currency, the 1973 quarter serves as a reminder that even the most familiar coins can tell extraordinary stories. Every authentic example carries with it a small chapter of American history, waiting to be appreciated by the next person who pauses long enough to look beyond its face value. When the first 1973 Washington quarters left the United States Mint, they were expected to be identical in every important detail. Each coin was struck using carefully engraved steel dies under tremendous pressure, creating the familiar portrait of George Washington on one side and the heraldic eagle on the other. The minting process was designed for consistency, yet producing hundreds of millions of coins every year meant that tiny mechanical imperfections occasionally occurred. These rare manufacturing mistakes are now among the most fascinating areas of modern coin collecting because they provide evidence of how coins are actually made. Instead of representing damage that happened after a coin entered circulation, genuine mint errors were created during production itself, making them valuable pieces of minting history. One of the best-known mint errors is the off-center strike. Before the dies come together, the blank metal planchet must sit perfectly in position. If it shifts even slightly, part of the design may be missing, while a blank crescent-shaped area remains around one edge. Every off-center strike is different because no two misalignments occur in exactly the same way. Collectors generally prefer examples that still show the complete date and enough of the design to identify the coin. Dramatic off-center strikes are much scarcer than ordinary quarters and can be worth substantially more than face value when authenticated, especially if they are well preserved. Another error that continues to attract attention is the clipped planchet. Long before the design is struck, circular blanks are punched from large sheets of metal. Occasionally, the cutting machine overlaps a previously punched hole, leaving part of the next blank missing. When that incomplete blank receives its design, the finished quarter permanently displays a curved section missing from its edge. A genuine clipped planchet is not the result of damage after the coin entered circulation. Specialists look for specific signs, including the way the metal flowed during striking, to confirm that the clip occurred during the manufacturing process. These unusual coins remain popular because they clearly demonstrate one of the earliest stages of coin production. Broad strike errors reveal another hidden part of the minting process. During a normal strike, a metal collar surrounds the blank and prevents it from spreading outward under pressure. If the collar fails to lock into place, the blank expands beyond its intended size. The finished coin appears wider than normal with a flatter edge, yet most of the design remains visible. Although broad strikes are uncommon, they offer collectors an opportunity to see how important the collar is in creating the correct diameter and shape of every circulating coin. A single mechanical failure, lasting only a few moments, can create a collectible that survives for generations. As steel dies continue striking hundreds of thousands of quarters, they gradually begin to wear. Tiny fractures known as die cracks may develop across the surface of the die. Every coin struck afterward carries raised lines matching those cracks. At first, these lines may be thin and difficult to notice without magnification. As the die continues to wear, the cracks can become larger and more dramatic. In rare situations, part of the die breaks away entirely, creating a raised area called a cud. Collectors often study these progressive changes because they reveal how production equipment ages during normal operation, and because each cracked die develops its own distinctive pattern. Some quarters display weak or missing portions of the design because grease or other debris temporarily filled part of the die before striking occurred. These are commonly called grease-filled die errors or struck-through grease errors. The missing detail is usually limited to specific letters, numbers, or small sections of the design. Although these errors generally command lower premiums than major striking mistakes, they remain genuine mint-made varieties and are appreciated by collectors who enjoy studying the finer details of coin production. They also remind us that even something as small as trapped grease can leave a permanent mark on a finished coin. Among the most exciting discoveries are wrong planchet errors. Every denomination uses metal blanks of a particular size, weight, and composition. On extremely rare occasions, a blank intended for another denomination accidentally enters the quarter production line. When struck with quarter dies, the resulting coin often appears unusually small, unusually light, or made from an unexpected metal. Because these errors are exceptionally rare, they require careful authentication using precise weight measurements and metallurgical testing. Authentic wrong planchet errors have become prized pieces because they combine rarity with a fascinating explanation of how such a mistake could occur inside a busy minting facility. Condition remains one of the most important factors influencing collector value. A typical 1973 quarter spent decades passing through cash registers, vending machines, parking meters, and countless everyday transactions. Over time, this constant handling gradually wore away the highest points of the design while creating scratches and contact marks across the surface. Coins that escaped circulation shortly after leaving the mint are much more difficult to find today. Brilliant luster, crisp details, and clean surfaces can make a dramatic difference in collector demand, especially when the coin is professionally graded and certified. Professional grading services have become trusted authorities in evaluating modern coins. Experts inspect authenticity, strike quality, preservation, and overall eye appeal before assigning a numerical grade using internationally accepted standards. A difference of only 1 or 2 grading points may significantly influence value, particularly among the highest grade examples where very few coins survive. Collectors often seek certified coins because independent grading provides confidence that the piece has been accurately evaluated and protected inside a secure holder. It is also important to separate documented facts from exaggerated stories. Claims occasionally circulate online suggesting that every 1973 Washington quarter is secretly worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Those claims are not supported by reliable evidence. Most circulated 1973 quarters remain worth 25 cents because they were produced in very large numbers. Coins that achieve impressive prices almost always have something truly exceptional about them: an authenticated major mint error, an extremely high certified grade, or another verified characteristic that sets them apart from ordinary examples. Rarity, condition, and authenticity are the qualities that create collector value, not simply the year printed on the coin, More than 50 years after its release, the 1973 Washington quarter continues to reward careful observation. Every coin examined teaches something about history, manufacturing, or the evolution of American currency. Whether a collector discovers an unusual mint era, a beautifully preserved example, or simply gains a deeper appreciation for the craftsmanship behind everyday money, the search itself becomes part of the experience. That spirit of curiosity is one of the reasons the Washington quarter remains one of the most collected and studied coins in the United States, proving that even an ordinary-looking quarter can have an extraordinary story to tell. Every great coin collection begins with a simple question: could this ordinary-looking coin be something special? That question has inspired generations of collectors to search through pocket change, inherited coin albums, forgotten piggy banks, and old jars filled with loose coins. The 1973 Washington quarter has become one of the coins that frequently appears during those searches. While most examples are common circulation pieces worth 25 cents, the excitement comes from the possibility of discovering a coin with exceptional preservation or a genuine mint era that escaped the United States Mint decades ago. Every careful examination offers the chance to uncover a small piece of American history hiding in plain sight. One of the first things experienced collectors notice is that rarity does not always come from age. Millions of coins from the early 1900s have survived, while certain modern coins exist in much smaller numbers because of unusual production mistakes or exceptionally low survival in pristine condition. The 1973 quarter is an excellent example of this principle. Because hundreds of millions were struck, ordinary circulated pieces remain common. However, finding a coin with blazing original luster, sharp design details, and almost no contact marks is much more challenging. These outstanding survivors often become the coins that advanced collectors compete to own. Auction results have demonstrated that collectors are willing to pay substantial premiums for coins that combine rarity with outstanding quality. Certified examples in the highest mint state grades have sold for far more than ordinary circulation pieces because so few remain in that condition after decades of use. Likewise, authenticated mint errors, including dramatic off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, and other significant production mistakes, can bring impressive prices when offered through reputable auction houses. These sales reflect collector demand for exceptional coins rather than the value of an average 1973 quarter found in everyday change. Because excitement surrounding valuable coins has grown through social media and online videos, many exaggerated stories now circulate on the internet. Headlines sometimes claim that every old quarter is worth thousands or even millions of dollars. In reality, professional collectors rely on evidence instead of rumors. A coin's true value depends on its authenticity, rarity, condition, and demand within the collector market. Extraordinary prices are generally reserved for extraordinary coins. An ordinary circulated 1973 quarter, even if it has become dark, dirty, or heavily worn over time, does not automatically become valuable simply because it is old. In the end, the true legacy of the 1973 Washington quarter is not measured solely by its market value. Its lasting importance comes from the stories it carries, the history it preserves, and the curiosity it inspires. Every authentic quarter connects the present with the past, reminding us that history is not found only in museums or books. Sometimes it is quietly waiting in the palm of your hand, inviting you to take one more careful look before it disappears into circulation once again. Step 4. When most people receive a 1980 Washington quarter in their change, they rarely stop to examine it. It usually travels from one pocket to another, passes through cash registers, disappears into coin jars, or ends up forgotten inside old drawers. Yet every authentic 1980 quarter carries a story that stretches across nearly half a century of American history. Although it was created as everyday money, this coin represents an important period in the evolution of United States currency, when modern clad coinage had fully replaced circulating silver and the nation's economy was experiencing significant change. While the vast majority of circulated 1980 quarters are worth only their face value of 25 cents. Certain exceptional examples, including major mint errors and coins preserved in outstanding condition, have earned much greater attention from collectors. The history of this coin begins long before 1980. In 1932, the United States introduced the Washington Quarter to celebrate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Sculptor John Flanagan created the portrait that still appears on the coin today. His design replaced the standing Liberty Quarter and quickly became one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Over the decades, Americans carried this familiar portrait through times of prosperity, war, technological advancement, and social change. By 1980, the Washington Quarter had already become an enduring symbol of stability within the nation's monetary system. George Washington's portrait was chosen because it represents far more than the nation's first president. Washington became a symbol of leadership, perseverance, and the peaceful transfer of power that helped shape the young republic. Above his portrait appears the word liberty, reminding Americans of one of the nation's founding ideals. To the left appears, "In God We Trust," the national motto displayed on United States coins. Beneath Washington is the date 1980, marking the year the coin entered circulation. Together, these inscriptions transform an ordinary quarter into a lasting reminder of the principles on which the country was founded. Turning the coin over reveals the familiar reverse that Americans recognized for generations before the state quarters program began in 1999. A powerful eagle stands proudly with its wings spread wide, perched above a bundle of arrows that symbolize readiness to defend the nation. Olive branches beneath the arrows represent the desire for peace. Around the eagle appear the inscriptions United States of America and EPLUBUSUNUM, a Latin phrase meaning out of many, one. At the bottom appears quarter dollar, clearly identifying the denomination. Every element of this design reflects ideas of unity, strength, and national identity that have remained central to American coinage for decades. One detail that often interests beginning collectors is the small letter D found beside the date. This mint mark identifies the coin as having been struck at the Denver Mint in Colorado. During 1980, the United States Mint produced Washington quarters at multiple facilities. Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark, Denver coins displayed the letter D, and San Francisco produced specially prepared proof coins marked with an S for collectors. Mint marks allow collectors to identify where a coin was made and compare production figures between different facilities. The year 1980 came during a period when the United States had already completed its transition away from circulating silver coinage. Many people mistakenly assume that older quarters automatically contain silver, but regular 1980 D quarters do not. Like other circulation quarters of the period, they were struck using a copper core bonded between outer layers of copper and nickel. This durable clad construction had been introduced after the Coinage Act of 1965, when rising silver prices made continued production of silver circulation coins impractical. The new composition allowed the mint to produce the enormous quantities of coins needed for everyday commerce while preserving the familiar appearance of the Washington Quarter. The Denver Mint worked continuously to produce millions of quarters needed throughout the country. Giant presses transformed strips of clad metal into finished coins at remarkable speed. Every blank planchet passed through multiple stages before becoming a completed quarter. Although quality control procedures were carefully designed, no manufacturing process is completely perfect. Tiny variations in machinery, worn dies, or misaligned blanks occasionally produced unusual coins that escaped inspection and entered circulation. Decades later, these accidental survivors have become some of the most desirable modern-era coins because they reveal the hidden mechanics of the minting process. One reason collectors continue studying the 1980 D quarter is its connection to the final years of the classic Washington reverse design. For nearly 7 decades, Americans recognized the eagle reverse as one of the defining symbols of the quarter-dollar denomination. Only in 1999 did the state quarters program temporarily replace it with rotating state designs. Because of that later transformation, coins like the 1980 D quarter now represent the closing years of a design that had become part of everyday American life for generations. Condition plays a critical role in determining collector interest. Most 1980D quarters spent years in circulation, gradually accumulating worn details, small scratches, and countless contact marks. These pieces usually remain worth face value unless they possess an authenticated mint era. By contrast, coins that were carefully preserved from the day they were struck may still display bright mint luster, sharply defined details, and exceptional eye appeal. Such high-grade survivors are much scarcer than many people realize because relatively few individuals intentionally saved ordinary circulation quarters in perfect condition during the early 1980s. Another easy way to recognize a regular 1980D clad quarter is by examining its edge. Instead of appearing solid silver in color, the edge reveals a thin copper-colored stripe running through the center. This visible copper core distinguishes modern clad quarters from the earlier 90% silver quarters produced before 1965. It is one of the quickest identification methods used by collectors and serves as a reminder of the historic change in American coinage that occurred during the mid-1960s. Today, the 1980D Washington quarter remains a fascinating collectible because it combines familiar design, historical significance, and the possibility of discovering genuine mint eras or unusually well-preserved examples. Most pieces encountered in circulation will never be rare, yet every authentic coin tells part of the larger story of American money, from its patriotic inscriptions to its Denver Mint mark. From its modern clad composition to its role in everyday commerce, the 1980D quarter quietly preserves a chapter of United States history that continues to attract collectors more than 4 decades after it was first struck. The journey of every 1980D Washington quarter began long before the finished coin reached a bank or cash register. Huge rolls of copper-nickel-clad metal entered the Denver Mint, where powerful machines punched perfectly round blanks known as planchets. These blanks were cleaned, inspected, and then fed into high-speed coin presses capable of striking hundreds of coins every minute. Every stage of production was carefully controlled, yet even the most advanced machinery could not guarantee absolute perfection. Tiny mechanical problems, worn equipment, or unexpected changes during the striking process occasionally produced coins unlike any others. Those accidental creations, once considered manufacturing mistakes, are now among the most fascinating treasures sought by modern collectors. One of the most dramatic mint errors found on Washington quarters is the off-center strike. During normal production, the planchet must rest precisely between the upper and lower dies before the tremendous striking pressure is applied. If the blank shifts even slightly, the design is impressed away from the center, leaving a blank crescent-shaped area along one side of the coin. Some off-center strikes are minor and require close inspection, while others are so dramatic that nearly half of the design is missing. Collectors generally prefer examples where the date and the D mint mark remain visible because these details confirm exactly which coin experienced the striking error. Every authentic off-center strike is unique, making no two examples exactly alike. Another fascinating production mistake is the clipped planchet error. Before striking begins, circular blanks are punched from long sheets of clad metal. If the punching machine overlaps an area that has already been cut, the next blank may emerge with a curved section missing from its edge. When that incomplete blank enters the coin press, the finished quarter permanently displays the missing section while still showing the normal Washington design. Specialists identify genuine clipped planchets by studying the shape of the clip and the natural metal flow around it. Unlike damage caused after a coin enters circulation, a true clipped planchet originated inside the mint itself, giving it lasting collectible appeal. Broad strike errors offer another fascinating look inside the minting process. Under normal conditions, a metal collar surrounds the blank during striking and controls its final diameter. If that collar fails to engage properly, the metal spreads outward under pressure instead of being held in place. The result is a coin that appears wider and thinner than a normal quarter while retaining most of its design. Broad-struck quarters clearly demonstrate how important the collar is during production. Even a brief mechanical malfunction, lasting only seconds, can produce a coin that collectors continue studying decades later, Die cracks are another type of mint-made variety that often attracts experienced collectors. Every steel die is subjected to tremendous force as it strikes hundreds of thousands of coins. Over time, tiny fractures may develop across its surface. Every coin struck afterward displays raised lines corresponding to those cracks, because the damaged die transfers its imperfections directly onto the metal. Some die cracks remain delicate and barely visible, while others become bold enough to cross major portions of the design. In more advanced cases, sections of the die may actually break away, producing large raised features known as cuds. These progressive stages of die wear provide valuable insight into the life cycle of mint equipment. Grease-filled die errors represent another interesting category of collectible mistakes. During production, grease or debris may temporarily fill recessed areas of a die, preventing part of the design from striking completely. The finished coin may display weak lettering, partially missing numbers, or faded design elements, even though the surface itself remains undamaged. Once the obstruction is removed, later coins return to normal appearance. Although grease-filled die errors generally bring more modest premiums than major striking mistakes, they remain authentic products of the minting process and illustrate how even tiny obstructions can affect thousands of coins before being discovered. Among the rarest modern discoveries are wrong planchet errors. Every denomination uses blanks made to specific dimensions and weight standards. On very rare occasions, a blank intended for another denomination accidentally enters the quarter production line. When quarter dies strike that incorrect blank, the resulting coin often appears unusually small, unusually light, or composed of an unexpected metal. Because such errors are extremely uncommon, professional authentication is essential. Experts verify weight, diameter, and metal composition before confirming that the coin truly represents a wrong planchet error rather than post-mint alteration. Condition continues to be one of the most important factors affecting collector value. Most 1980D quarters circulated extensively, acquiring scratches, worn details, and countless small contact marks during decades of everyday use. Coins that escaped circulation immediately after leaving the mint are far scarcer today. Bright original luster, crisp lettering, sharply defined feathers on the eagle, and clean surfaces greatly increase collector appeal. Professional grading services carefully evaluate these characteristics before assigning a numerical grade that helps establish market value and authenticity. Many online videos and social media posts suggest that every old quarter could be worth extraordinary amounts of money. While these stories are exciting, the reality is much more selective. Most circulated 1980D Washington quarters remain worth 25 cents because they were produced in very large numbers. Coins that sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars almost always possess something genuinely unusual, such as a significant authenticated mint error or exceptionally high certified condition. Their value comes from rarity and collector demand, not simply from the date printed on the coin. For collectors, the true excitement lies in careful observation. Every quarter examined becomes an opportunity to learn more about the history of American coinage, the engineering behind the minting process, and the remarkable ways in which tiny manufacturing differences can create lasting collectibles. The 1980D Washington quarter reminds us that history is often hidden in the smallest details. While most examples remain ordinary pieces of circulating currency, a small number stand apart because of their unusual journey through the mint, making them fascinating additions to collections and enduring symbols of modern American numismatics. Every collector eventually reaches the moment when curiosity becomes knowledge. A simple quarter that once seemed ordinary begins to reveal tiny details that tell an extraordinary story. The 1980D Washington quarter is one of those coins. Millions were produced, and most continue to circulate unnoticed, yet every authentic example represents a small chapter in the history of American coinage. While only a tiny percentage possess characteristics that make them highly collectible, the search itself has inspired generations of enthusiasts to look more closely at the coins they use every day. That excitement is one of the reasons the Washington quarter remains among the most widely collected coins in the United States. When experienced collectors evaluate a 1980D quarter, they begin with careful observation rather than assumptions. They study the sharpness of Washington's hair, the clarity of the word liberty, the strength of in God we trust, the crispness of the eagle's feathers, and the condition of the coin's surface under proper lighting. Every small mark tells part of the coin's story. A quarter that traveled through decades of everyday commerce will naturally display signs of wear, while one preserved immediately after striking may still shine with the bright mint luster it possessed when it left the Denver Mint more than 40 years ago. That difference in preservation can dramatically influence collector interest. Professional grading services have transformed modern coin collecting by creating consistent standards for evaluating authenticity and condition. Specialists examine every surface using magnification and controlled lighting before assigning a numerical grade. A coin that appears nearly perfect under close inspection may receive one of the highest mint state grades, while another struck on the same day but heavily circulated will receive a much lower grade. This independent evaluation helps collectors buy and sell with confidence and explains why two 1980D quarters that look similar at first glance can have very different market values. Auction results occasionally remind the collecting community how strongly rarity and preservation influence prices. Authenticated major mint errors, such as dramatic off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, or other significant production mistakes, have sold for hundreds or sometimes thousands of dollars, depending on the exact error, the coin's condition, and collector demand at the time of sale. Likewise, certified examples in exceptional mint state grades can bring premiums that surprise people who are unfamiliar with numismatics. These impressive sales reflect the rarity of those specific coins, not the value of an average circulated 1980D quarter. Because sensational stories spread quickly online, many people believe that every older quarter is secretly worth a fortune. The reality is much more straightforward. The overwhelming majority of circulated 1980D Washington quarters remain worth their face value of 25 cents because they were produced in very large numbers and survive in abundance. A coin becomes valuable when it possesses characteristics that are both genuine and scarce, such as an authenticated mint error or an exceptionally high state of preservation. Understanding this difference helps collectors focus on facts instead of exaggerated claims. If you discover a 1980D quarter that appears unusual, one of the most important things you can do is avoid cleaning it. Cleaning may make a coin appear brighter, but it often leaves fine scratches or alters the original surface in ways that reduce collector interest. Most experienced numismatists prefer coins that retain their natural appearance, even when they show honest age. If a coin seems to have a significant mint error or exceptional condition, storing it safely and seeking professional authentication is usually the best course of action. The greatest value of the 1980D Washington quarter is not found only in auction prices or collector demand. Its true importance lies in the story it tells about the nation that produced it, the technology that created it, and the people who used it every day. Every authentic quarter serves as a reminder that history is often hidden in the most familiar objects. Sometimes the greatest discovery is not a fortune waiting to be found, but a deeper appreciation for the remarkable history carried by a simple 25-cent coin.